Shalom and welcome to our fourth conversion class. Today we'll be learning about some signs of the covenant, as long as some information, insights about the synagogue itself, where Jewish people gather, things that may be of interest to you, things potentially you've heard before, but things that, of course, we want you to be cognizant of as Jews, becoming familiar with these items, these elements, and what have you. So welcome, glad you're here. Welcome to our class, and glad to be with you. Today, as I said, we'll be covering some signs of the covenant. We'll start with those first. We'll be talking specifically about three particular signs of the covenant, symbols of the covenant, things that stand out that you see Jewish people wear most prominently. These, of course, are Tefillin, mezuzah, and tzitzit. Now, I could also include in this the kippah, the head covering, and let me speak about that for just a moment. I am wearing what is called a kippah. In Yiddish, it's referred to as a yarmulke. Maybe Jewish people do refer to it as a yarmulke, but Israelis, my experience, Jewish people that I've been around most prominently use the term kippah. I don't know if one's more prominent than the other, but it seems to me that kippah is what we use. I almost never say yarmulke, but some people do. In either case, it's referring to the same thing. Kippahs are made of various material. Sometimes those materials indicate what branch of Judaism you're from. So, as an example, it's not uncommon for modern Orthodox Jews to wear the knitted kippah. Now, keep in mind, let me say this, that, just because you're wearing a knit kippah doesn't mean that you're one thing or the other. But as I say, sometimes these kippahs are worn by particular streams of Judaism. Most traditional Orthodox Jews and Hasidic Jews will wear the velvet or the felt kippah, the black kippah. Sometimes those kippahs they're black, but they're made of a tightly woven material, so they're not exactly felt or what have you, but they're of a different material. Really, anything that covers your head is a kippah, whether it's a ball cap or any other kind of hat, a fedora. It qualifies as a head covering. The kippah is worn by Jews because it's something that can be worn all the time, indoors and outdoors, and it's just pretty simple. Now, I will say that Jewish people who wear caps, fedoras, as an example, will almost always have a kippah under that hat. Does it always have to be the case? Not necessarily. If you're out in the field working, out in the yard working, it may not be a good idea to have a kippah under your hat. Maybe, in this hot summertime, if you're working outdoors, it's probably not smart to do that, maybe because it keeps too much heat in on your head to have multiple layers like that. Having said that, if people are out and about walking around, they're wearing some kind of hat, they will almost always have a kippah underneath. Men cover their head rather, for different reasons than women cover their head. Most ladies are familiar with the tekel or a hat or something like that women wear, married women wear. Married women cover their hair, which is an important distinction. They're covering their hair, not necessarily their head, but their hair, as a result of modesty, because now they're married women. The woman's hair is considered sensual, and therefore, once she becomes married, she covers that sensual part of her and reserves it only for her husband. In Judaism, a lot of Orthodox women will wear a headscarf known as a tekel. Some will wear a wig known as a sheitel. Others will wear hats, berets, bandanas and a variety and assortment of various head covering, hair coverings for women. In Lapid Judaism, we embrace any and all of those. So if a woman wants to wear a tekel, she can. If she wants to wear a sheitel, she can. If she wants to wear a headband, she can, or a hat or something like that. In all cases, we accept any and all forms of that. A man covers his head, not his hair, for a distinctly different reason. The reason why a man covers his head is in order to indicate that he is a servant of the Most High. There's a couple of reasons for this. One of the reasons, which is not really the primary reason, but one of the reasons is because in antiquity, it has been said that slaves or servants covered their head, and therefore, we do likewise. That's not really the main reason. The main reason, or perhaps the area from which this custom is derived, is from the fact that when the priests and Levites were working inside the tabernacle and later the temple, they were commanded by God to wear head coverings, and most of the head coverings for the Levites and the priests looked like the kippah. The high priest himself wore a turban, but everybody else wore like a kippah. And as a result, the Jewish people said, listen, God is everywhere. So if one must cover their head in service to God in the tabernacle or in the temple, then it reasons that we should cover our head everywhere, because God is in fact everywhere, and everywhere we go is a dwelling place for the Most High. So we cover our head out of respect to the Shekinah. And because every Jew, to one degree or another, has a part to play in the priesthood, in the service of the king, so therefore we cover our head. As a side note, one will notice in Scripture, and there are several examples, but any and every time that someone in the Bible, talking about the Tanakh, goes to pray, you will notice that they always cover their head. To that regard, it became, in our American culture, it's considered a sign of respect, particularly when praying, for men to take off their hats. You'll see this, of course, in the United States, probably in a lot of other Western countries, but in the United States particularly, whenever it comes time to pray, to bow your head and pray, whatever the circumstance, men will always remove their hats, remove their cowboy hats, remove whatever head covering they're wearing. And this, of course, is, as I said, a part of the American culture based upon the teachings of Christianity. It should be noted that Judaism is the exact opposite. When of course, an Orthodox Jewish man always has his head covered, always. However, even amongst Jews, if there is a Jewish man who is not Orthodox, almost always when it comes time to pray or say a blessing, they will cover their head with a ball cap or something like that. It should also be noted that when you visit Israel and go, as an example, to the Kotel, the Western Wall, head coverings there are in fact required. So you have the head covering. Then you also have the three other signs as well that we see, which is Tefillin, mezuzah, and the tzitzit. The Tefillin, of course, are also sometimes referred to as phylacteries, really only called phylacteries, as far as I've ever heard, outside of Jewish circles. Inside of Jewish circles, the Tefillin is always referred to as Tefillin. And Tefillin are leather boxes. They look like this. These are my Tefillin here. They are leather boxes, and they have a sheen on this. The sheen is on the head Tefillin. The arm Tefillin it does not have any letters on the box itself. There is a sheen on this side, and on the other side there is so you see this side there is the three-pronged sheen, and on the other side there's the four-pronged sheen. And the four-pronged sheen is said to have some very esoteric meaning. It goes back, obviously, way back to antiquity. It's interesting that when the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered, they also discovered some tefillin and some mezuzot, some parchments, and they all look exactly the same. So the way that we look at our tefillin today is exactly the way they looked 2,000 years ago. Now, some tefillin are large, some tefillin are slightly smaller, some are, the smaller ones usually are for bar mitzvah boys, the bigger ones maybe obviously for adult males, but in, you know, outside of the sizing, they look exactly the same. I also want you to notice in this picture that on the head tefillin that has the sheen on it, I want you to notice two peculiar things that differentiate it from the arm tefillin. Number one, you'll notice on the head tefillin that there are, looks like four compartments. The way that the leather is scored, it looks like there are four compartments on the head tefillin. I'm going to explain why that's the case. That is not the situation on the arm tefillin. It is not scored, so it does not look like there are four compartments. The reason for this is because the head tefillin and the arm tefillin have the exact same scripture verses inside on parchment. However, the parchments that are placed in the head tefillin are separated into four compartments, which I'm going to show you in just a moment, whereas and they're on four separate parchments, whereas the arm tefillin, the parchment is on one scroll inside, so they're not separated out. I also want you to notice on the head tefillin, and you see with the sheen on there, see those three lines that protrude from the base of the tefillin. This looks like lines. They kind of seem to come from one source, and there's 1, 2, 3. Those are actually hairs of a cow that are there from the way in which the tefillin is made with the sewing of the box or what have you. And that's all part of the halakhic way in which they're made. Those three strands of hair there are not, that's not a mistake, that's not a fray. That's the way that they're supposed to be made. So this is what the tefillin look like. Again, the four-pronged, and then on the other side, you have the three-pronged. As I said, inside the tefillin, the head tefillin, you have four compartments. This is the inside of a tefillin that we have, that we use for teaching purposes. There are four parchments. In this case, one of the parchments is missing because we have it out for show. Whenever we show what the inside of a tefillin looks like. But as you can see, it is in fact made of leather, even though the box itself looks like it might be wood, but it's leather. And you can see the four compartments of the head tefillin, and each of these four compartments have separate parchments in it, which have specific verses on them. We see that there, and I'm going to see if I can pull up this picture of, just to give you an example of what the little folded up parchment looks like. It looks kind of like that right there, just like a little, almost like a letter, if you will. It's actually one scroll that's kind of folded up. It's rolled up and kind of pressed flat and folded up and put into the head compartments there. The arm has the same scriptures, which we're going to cover in just a moment what those are, but it is written on one long scroll. So I took this picture because I couldn't get the entire scroll in the frame, but it is on one long scroll that rolls up, just like you can imagine, rolls up like a scroll, and is put into the arm tefillin, and that's what that looks like here in this picture. Now, the question is, most important question is, what is written on these scrolls? What exactly are the verses we have here? And this is going to be important to know. There are the four passages that are inside the head and arm of the tefillin are Exodus 13, 1 through 10, Exodus 13, 11 through 16, Deuteronomy 6, 4 through 9, and Deuteronomy 11, 13 through 21. So just to reiterate those once again, those four compartments that we have here in this picture, as well as this long scroll that we see here, in both instances, the same verses are written on them, and they are Exodus 13, 1 through 10, Exodus 13, 11 through 16, Deuteronomy 6, 4 through 9, and Deuteronomy 11, 13 through 21. That is what is on the tefillin that men wear. The word tefillin itself reminds one of the Hebrew word tefillah, which means prayer. Both words are derived from the same root, which mean judgment. So when we stand to pray, we're standing in a form of judgment, not in a negative sense, but in the positive sense of judging ourselves, judging where we stand, euphemistically and allegorically. Prayer and the ritual objects, it says here, associated with it, testify to our faith in the presence and judgment of the Almighty, while also providing the opportunity for self-examination and self-judgment, which I would add to that, self-refinement. Now, we're not going to get in this class to all the particular halakha related to tefillin, we're going to touch some high points here, but we're not going to get into a deep dive on this because we just don't have the time. That's actually going to be reserved more for Zake and Rayford's class when that comes around for the halakha. Women are exempt from wearing tefillin, and as a matter of custom, do not wear tefillin. There have been no Orthodox Jewish women at any point of history who have ever worn the tefillin. That same thing goes for the tzitzit. Even though technically a woman might, one could argue, particularly with tzitzit, one could argue that women could wear the tefillin, the tzitzit, maybe the tefillin. The practical reality is that no Orthodox Jewish women ever have. And one of the reasons for that is kind of like the idea of not wearing the opposite sex garments. So tefillin are considered a garment. It's most assuredly, tzitzit are considered a garment. And since these are associated with men, women just typically have not worn them. And this is not a slight against women, which sometimes women, see it as that, but it's not. It's not a slight against women. My recommendation for ladies would be to leave it as a man's mitzvah. Too often in life, in religious life, we see women who kind of, and no offense to you ladies, but you're very zealous, and so this is just a caution to your zeal. Women in their zeal, they have good initiative, but in their zeal, they want to kind of co-opt men's mitzvah. Why can't we, they say. But then what happens is that they kind of take away the man's duty and responsibility. And then the men just kind of drift away. And in large part, this is the reason why. So allow men to have their duty. So that's how men are driven. They're driven by a sense of duty, a sense of responsibility. Manning up is something that men say to each other from the time that we're boys until we die. And so manning up does not mean let your wife do it for you. And so women need to be careful that you don't co-opt a man's mitzvot and basically, blur the line, if you know what I mean. So just be cautious in that, ladies. Be zealous, but be zealous for your mitzvot. Okay? Having said that, as a matter of course, ladies need to be aware of what the mitzvot are for men, just like men need to be aware of what the mitzvot are for women. Now, since a minor male, it says here, the one who is under 13, does not put on tefillin until he becomes of age, until he becomes a bar mitzvah, putting on tefillin has become the most visible religious ritual that so-called sets the men apart from the boys. So this is another reason why women, if you'll just permit me to speak to you ladies once again, this is another reason why, ladies, you don't want to be co-opting the tzitzit or the tefillin or the talit gadol or what have you, because this is how your little boy is going to become a man. And you know, you want your son to want to be a man and to want to do things that men do. And little boys, by the way, look forward to such things. As little boys, we looked forward to shaving. Why? Because it made us feel like men. And so if mommy is wearing the tefillin, you already see the problem. Okay. So I just want to bring that up. The reason I bring it up is because this is something that happens in the hearts of ladies, and it happens amongst some Jewish ladies. They're not Orthodox, but nevertheless, some Jewish ladies. Now, we wear tefillin during the daytime, and the fact of the matter is, even though it's customary to wrap tefillin in the morning, you can, in fact, wrap tefillin at any part of the day when it's daylight outside. So there are some men who go to work very early. Very oftentimes they go to work prior to sunrise in some cases, and they're not able to wrap tefillin in the morning. And I've had men lament to me that, you know, this is their schedule, and it's understandable. What they may not realize is that you can wrap tefillin at any time during the day. As long as it's daylight time, day or light out, you can wrap tefillin. So you're not limited to wearing tefillin just in the morning times. You could, in fact, technically wear tefillin all day long. You don't have to, you know, take it off as an example. Now, you cannot wear tefillin into the restroom. That's just a side note. You can't take your tefillin into the restroom. We'll cover that in just a moment, by the way, because I have a little halakhic point about that. But anyway, you can't take it into the restroom, but you can, in fact, wear it. We wear it, as I said, during the weekdays. We do not wear it on Shabbat. The reason we do not wear it on Shabbat is because Shabbat itself is a sign. Tefillin is a sign of the covenant. Shabbat itself is a sign of the covenant. Therefore, we don't wear it on Shabbat. We also don't wear it on Yom Tov, when there is a Jewish holiday. And according to both Sephardic custom as well as the custom of the Vilna Gaon, we do not wear tefillin during Kol HaMoed of the holidays. So in other words, during the week of Pesach, as well as during the entire week of Sukkot, and the day, well, that's just the 2 days. That's just the 2 weeks. The week of Pesach and the week of Sukkot, we would not wear tefillin. This is fairly universal custom. There are some who wear tefillin but don't say a blessing, because there's a debate as to whether or not a Kol HaMoed is exactly like a Yom Tov, and many feel that it is. Some say it not exactly, but kind of, and therefore some don't wear tefillin at all, and therefore we do not do that either because of that reason. I also want to come back and circle back to something I mentioned a second ago. You're not allowed to take tefillin into a bathroom. You're not allowed to take holy books into a bathroom. You're not allowed to take your talit gadol into a bathroom. But what do you do if you're traveling and you can't exactly just leave your bag or leave whatever sitting about? So what do you do? And the answer is that if you have it double bagged, then it's fine. So for this reason, well, not exactly entirely for this reason, but tefillin will have a tefillin bag like this. Different designs or what have you, but same general size or what have you. And your tefillin, this is the tefillin cover for the tefillin, your tefillin will go into the tefillin bag. That's bag number one. So when you have this bag inside of another bag, like your suitcase or perhaps your satchel or something like that, that's bag number 2. So if you have your tefillin or holy book or talit gadol inside of a bag like this that goes into another bag like a suitcase or a satchel or a briefcase, then that's double bagged, and you can go into the restroom with those items like that. And as I said, sometimes that becomes a practicality when you're traveling about. Now we come now to the mezuzah. The word mezuzah literally means doorpost. It comes from Deuteronomy chapter 6:9, and these words which I command you this day, you shall write them on the doorposts of your house and upon your gates. The mezuzah, as I said, is referring to the doorpost. There are all kinds of mezuzah. Here's an example of one that we have. This particular design, many places around the synagogue. A mezuzah can be made out of wood, it can be made out of metal, glass, porcelain, really can be made out of anything. It could be in any decor or color that you want, and there are perhaps thousands of designs of mezuzot. All of them normally will have a sheen on it. That's the letter you see, the letter sheen. Some will have the word Shaddai on it. But I was recently asked the question, does a mezuzah have to have a sheen in order for it to be kosher? I thought the answer would be yes, and I was going to research that to be certain. I came to find out that, in fact, even though every mezuzah I've ever seen in my life had a sheen on it, it is not exactly required to have a sheen, so it's perfectly kosher for the mezuzah not to have a sheen. But as I said, everyone I've ever seen, and I've seen hundreds, maybe thousands, they've all had sheens on them. What really matters about the mezuzah is the parchment inside. And when you're referring to the document that's inside the mezuzah that has upon it the scripture verses, that is referred to as a parchment, not a scroll, but a parchment. Or a cloth. A cloth, that's the Hebrew, but it's really a parchment. This is how all Jews refer to what goes inside the mezuzah. Now, this particular mezuzah that's on the screen, you see it has an opening. So there's a glass tube inside that has the kosher parchment in that tube. What is facing you in this picture is the back side of that parchment, and notice that it has the word Shaddai written. That's what that is, the word Shaddai written on that that scroll. When you put the scroll in your mezuzah, you need to try, once you roll up the parchment, I should say, not scroll, but you roll up the parchment, you should attempt to make sure that the word Shaddai is facing towards this direction of the mezuzah. Whether or not it has an opening that you can see or not, it's irrelevant. The word Shaddai, you should strive so that it is facing this side. The parchment inside is handwritten. It's written not on paper, but on kosher parchment. And it has 2 verses inside. The first is the Shema, Deuteronomy 6:4-9. And the second passage is Deuteronomy 11:13-21. That is what's on inside the mezuzah, the parchment rather, what's written on the parchment. And that's what you have here as on the screen. You're looking at the parchment that goes inside. Now there's different size parchments. This is kind of the basic size. There's actually a larger size. If you happen to have a large mezuzah, you can get, I think, it's by centimeter. I think the large one is a 10 centimeter or something. This one I think is a 4 or 6 centimeter. I could be wrong. I think it's maybe a 6 centimeter. Don't quote me on that, but that's what you have on this is the inside of the parchment. This is what you would roll up, and this would be in the inside of the parchment. The back side of the parchment looks like this. Okay, this particular parchment, you see how it's this is stained. It's because the parchment, it's not really stained. It's just, this is natural animal skin that's been made into like a paper. And so it just sometimes has some natural grain to it. I circled in red. This red is not on this parchment. It's part of the computer screen. I circled the word Shaddai, the Shin Dalet Yud. The Shin Dalet Yud. So somebody asked me one time, and this is just for your personal information here. Somebody asked me one time, can you be a non-Jew? Can you be a Gentile and be a Torah keeper? And my response to them, which was probably shocking, I'm sure, was no, you cannot actually. And let me explain to you why. The Shin Dalet Yud, remember how we go back, let's go back here to this picture. And we see this is the head tefillin, okay? The head tefillin has a sheen on it, okay? And I didn't get a good picture. I didn't get a picture of this to show you, but you have the sheen. This head tefillin, the strap that goes behind the neck, which will it's tied into a knot, and that knot sits at the base of the back of the man's head. That knot is tied in a specific way so that it's in the form of a dalet. Okay. Now, therefore, you have the letter Shin, which is on the forehead. You have the letter Dalet, which is at the base of the neck. And then on a Jewish man, you have the circumcision, which the sages have said is likened to the Yud, the letter Yud. Therefore, when a Jewish man puts on tefillin, he has Shin on his head, Dalet on the back of his neck, and then the circumcision is the Yud, and therefore you have the word Shaddai. Now, what happens if you don't have the Shin? Excuse me, if you don't have the Yud? What happens if you erase the Yud? Meaning the man's not circumcised. He's not Jewish. Well, then you're left with the word, or the letter rather, Shin and Dalet. What does that spell? It spells the word shade, which is demon. And that's why this is so important. Incidentally, if we come back here to this picture of the arm tefillin and the head tefillin, we already see that we have the sheen on the head. And on the arm, however, when you're wrapping tefillin, you both on the upper arm, but especially on the hand. The upper arm, there's different customs, but on the hand particularly, the way you wrap it, you end up with a sheen on the hand as well. Now, I want to reference back to the book of Revelation just really quickly. We don't consider the book of Revelation scripture, of course, but it is an interesting read. And there is something there about the mark of the beast on the forehead and on the arm. That's interesting. It's interesting to note that a Jew, a kosher Jew, an Orthodox Jew, will live his life on a daily basis having the mark of God on his head and on his hand. Incidentally, the entire arm is considered the hand. It's the yad. So it is just an interesting thing to note there. I wanted to bring out. Now going back to the mezuzah. The mezuzah is required on the entrance door of the house. It's actually required on every entrance to the house, whether it's the front entrance or the back entrance or a side entrance. If you have multiple entrances to your home, a mezuzah is required at those entrances, regardless of whether or not you frequently use that entrance. So if you have a side entrance that you say, well, we hardly ever use that entrance, it still requires a mezuzah. In actual fact, you require a mezuzah on every interior room of your house. If you happen to have a gated home or you have some type of wall or what have you, you would need a mezuzah there. The only place we don't put mezuzahs on is on rooms that have toilets on them, or perhaps closets that are, small or what have you. And of course, mezuzah is only required on a permanent residence. It's not required on a residence that is temporary, like a sukkah, right? That's why we don't put a mezuzah on a sukkah. I should also mention, by the way, that if you have a mezuzah that does not have a kosher parchment in it, you don't have a mezuzah. This is really important because there are people who acquire mezuzot, and those mezuzot that they acquire have some type of printed piece of paper inside or something like that, and they put it up and they're very excited about it. But if you do not have a kosher parchment, then you don't have a mezuzah. Okay, so it's the parchment that matters, not the box. Okay, so the box is obviously part of the mitzvah, but what matters is what's inside the case. Okay, so just know that if you have a mezuzah on your home, but you don't have kosher parchment, you need to get a kosher parchment. Okay, and printing it off or whatever, that's not kosher. So just want to mention that as well. Incidentally, you can nail it to the wall, to the doorpost. You can screw it. You can use glue. You can use double-sided tape. Any of those things are perfectly fine. It goes on the right-hand side of the door. And you'll also notice that, and by the way, it goes on the right-hand side of the door, about shoulder height of the average man. And the mezuzah is to be tilted where it points towards the room that you're going into. Now we're going to turn our attention to tzitzit, the garment that is worn. So here we're talking about tzitzit that Jewish men wear on a daily basis. When you ask somebody in the Jewish world about tzitzit, they're not talking about the string. And I'll explain what I mean by that. Now, this is an up-close picture of one of the tassels or the tzitzit. This is the Ashkenazi tying method. Both Ashkenazi and Sephardic are perfectly kosher. This is the Ashkenazi. Tzitzit are always white unless they have the kosher techelet in it, which is, to the human eye, blue, like a royal blue, but it's not blue, it's techelet. If you don't have kosher techelet that you purchased from the kosher factory in Israel, then you must wear all white. If you add any color to it, or if, God forbid, you go down to the fabric store and you get blue yarn and decide you're going to put it in there, you have just invalidated your tzitzit. But this is tzitzit. When you go to Israel, as an example, and you're in a Judaica store and you say, "Where's your tzitzit?" They're going to direct you to this, and this is tzitzit in Israel, because tzitzit that is not on a four-cornered garment is invalid. So, needless to say, wearing tzitzit on your belt loops or something like that is not at all kosher. And if you don't mind me saying so, in the Jewish world, it's just kooky and weird. Okay, now I understand a lot of people started out that way and they had all the right intentions, the right motives, and I get it, and it's perfectly fine. And it's strange, but the tzitzit are to be worn on what's called a talit katan. The talit katan in this case is made out of wool. There are various types of kosher talit katan. Some are mesh, some are wool, some are cotton. Some are intended to be worn on the outside of the garment. Some are intended to be worn on the inside of the garment. Some have more of a t-shirt type feel to it. So you could actually wear it as a undershirt and have tzitzit. Most all Jews wear their tzitzit untucked. Of course, you can tuck in a shirt and still have your tzitzit hanging out. I do it all the time. Some Jewish people will tuck their tzitzit in some do that. Most of them do that on occasions where it's needful. Maybe because If you wore them untucked and you were doing work outside, it would be dangerous. You worked in a factory or an assembly line. You can't be having things hang out like that because it could be dangerous. If you're going to use a leaf blower, you want to tuck them in. Don't ask me how I know that. And and other things as well. Maybe if you were in a professional setting, like a police officer or a doctor, perhaps, or maybe you're an attorney, you might want to tuck them in because of professional things such as that nature. But this is what is referred to as seat. When you talk about seat, this is what you're talking about. And this is what you want to wear. Now, I don't have a picture of the Talit Gadol, meaning the big, what's commonly called the prayer shawl. But I will just want to say that from time to time, you will see men, particularly in Reform Judaism, and a lot, almost exclusively in so-called Messianic Judaism, you will see people wear the little prayer shawl type thing. Sometimes they wear it like a scarf. Let me see if I can pull up a picture here right quick that I can share with you so you know exactly what I'm talking about. Sometimes, like I said, they wear it almost like a neck scarf. And let me see if I can pull a picture for you. And I just want to bring this to your attention in case you have one of these. Kind of looks like this, right? So you have this kind of neck scarf talit right here. And as I say, they wear it on over the shoulders. Sometimes they'll fold it in half and wear it like you're wearing a neck scarf. This is not kosher at all. This particular one, as I see on the screen here, is messianic, which that's problematic too. But even besides that, this design, whether it's messianic or not, is not kosher. The Talit Gadol really needs to be the big type, so to speak, the kind that you see so commonly amongst Jewish men in Orthodox settings. And it needs to be, let me just give you another picture here. I can do this on the fly, thank God. This is the kind of talit that you're going to want to purchase. It needs to be the big kind, we call it the big kind, like so, that comes all the way down like a cape. This is the kosher style. Please don't get the scarf kind. If you have the scarf kind, discard it and get this type here for you to wear. This is what's called the Talit Gadol, the Great Talit. So this, with the seat, is the Talit Katan, the small Talit. The other, this, is the Talit Gadol. Both of them are Talits, actually. So when you wear a Talit Katan, you're actually wearing a Talit all the time, all around, everywhere. Now, let's transition quickly to the synagogue. Just a couple of points I want to make about the synagogue itself. The synagogue is the place where Jewish people meet to pray and, of course, have other functions, but its main institution is prayer. The word synagogue is actually Greek. The word for synagogue in Hebrew is beit Knesset. Beit Knesset, the house of assembly. Beit, house, Knesset, assembly. Yes, just like the Knesset in Israel is called the Knesset, the Beit Knesset is the synagogue house where we meet. A short way of saying synagogue is shul, which is part of the Yiddish word that means school, because a synagogue is a place of learning. So colloquially here, we use the word shul almost exclusively when referring to this place. The synagogue is not a temple. Jewish people who say they meet at a temple, these are Reformed Jewish people. And that's because they don't believe in the temple, and they believe that their house of worship has basically replaced the temple, which is extraordinarily blasphemous, actually. So from time to time, people will say, well, what temple do you go to? And I will always say, well, we attend a synagogue, et cetera, et cetera. But the synagogue is a place to be respected. It's a place where we need to behave respectfully and appropriately. It's not a place for frivolity. It's not a place, I'm talking primarily, of course, the sanctuary. It's not a place for eating and drinking and bringing snack foods and so forth and what have you. It's a place for prayer, a place for study, a place for worship. Having said that, it is not the temple. We do have certain elements within the synagogue that are intended to remember or be symbolic, of the temple, and that one of those would be here the bima. This is, of course, our bima. The bima is symbolic of the outer altar. Some say it's also symbolic of the shulchan inside the holy place. But the bima could represent both. This is, of course, where we put the scroll and read the Torah and what have you. We also have the pulpit, which is symbolic of the golden altar. This is where prayer comes. In our synagogue, this is where the gabbai stands and helps lead some of the prayers. We have the Holy Ark, of course. This is representative of the Holy of Holies. The veil in front of this is known as the parokhet. That's what the word for veil in Hebrew, the parokhet. This is the holiest piece of furniture in the entire synagogue, and naturally, the Torah itself is extraordinarily holy. And the Torah is so holy that if we ever, God forbid, needed to dispense with the Torah for some reason, then we would actually bury the Torah. You would bury it like you bury a Jew. That's how holy the Torah is. So we have the ark here. That's another piece of furniture. Then we have, above the ark, we have our Ner Tamid, which is the eternal flame. And this Ner Tamid it hangs above the ark. It never goes out. It is hardwired into the electricity. So that flame, the bulb inside there, is constantly lit. And this is to represent the menorah, but particularly the western light of the menorah, which was always kindled inside the temple. And so we also, in the synagogue, of course, we have the rabbi, naturally, the Hazan, who is the prayer leader. The Hazan is the one who is responsible for leading the prayers, chanting the blessings, principally reading from the Torah. Then you have the gabbai, sometimes referred to as the sexton, who will lead the congregation in certain prayers and has certain responsibilities outside of that as well. These are all leadership roles. The synagogue supposed to be, of course, as I said, a place of study, a place of learning, a place where we can come and draw near to God. The synagogue, the Tefillin, the mezuzah, the tzitzit, as I talked about, the kippah and head coverings, these are all things that are distinctly Jewish. When you see these things, you say, this is what points to Jews being Jews, and these are all things that we embrace. And now, having had this class, you are cognizant of them and more understanding of them. So this ends our class on this topic. We thank you for being here, and I will shortly put out a test for this course. That way you'll be able to take the test and really absorb this knowledge. If you have any questions or anything I've talked about that you'd like more clarity on, please feel free to reach out to me. Otherwise, we will see you next week, Bezrat Hashem, for our continued study on the conversion class. Have a great and amazing day. Be blessed, be safe, and be encouraged.